The ocean's voice carried laughter that didn't belong to the living. It echoed up the basalt cliffs, threading through the hiss of waves pounding the hollow vents below. Liam Corbett raised his phone toward the warning sign, "Danger, blowhole, keep back," and chuckled like the words themselves were part of the scenery. Maya Wren shouted for him to stop, her voice swallowed by the wind that smelled faintly of iron and salt. Below, the sea exhaled in thunder, each burst of spray illuminated gold by the setting sun. Then came the pause. Too long, too deep, like the sea was taking a breath in reverse. The air shifted, gulls screamed and scattered. Even the tourists who laughed moments ago fell quiet. The cliff seemed to lean toward them as if listening. Jonas Hale, the local guide, turned pale. When it stops breathing out, he whispered, that's when it remembers to breathe in. And for a heartbeat, everyone heard it. The ocean drawing a single massive breath beneath their feet. The group gathered near the van, shaken but laughing it off like a campfire story. Jonas wiped seawater from his brow, his hands trembling. That wasn't a tide surge, he muttered, half to himself. Maya pressed him for an explanation, her tone edged with scientific skepticism, but his eyes stayed fixed on the sea. My grandfather called it Mona's lung, he said. When the sea stops breathing, the island starts. Talia filmed his words, the camera blinking red in the dying light. Liam scoffed and flicked a pebble toward the cliff. Nature's just showing off, he said, but the pebble never landed. The wind carried it sideways into the void. Behind them, the sound came again, faint and hollow. A sigh from below that didn't belong to water. Maya frowned. Her instruments still registered pressure shifts, though the tide had gone still. Jonas finally looked up, voice breaking. You think you're standing on rock, but rock doesn't breathe. That night, the air was too quiet. The wind had died entirely, leaving the cliffs wrapped in a breathless calm. In their rented huts above Kaana Cove, the tourists slept restlessly, the walls quivering to a distant rhythmic pulse. Maya woke to the sound of a low moan. Not the sea, but something beneath it. She stepped outside, barefoot on cold volcanic stone, and felt the earth's shallow tremor. A thin mist rolled up the hill, carrying a briny stench that stung her throat. Then she saw it, one of the blowholes flaring with phosphorescent light, as though something deep below were exhaling through fire. Jonas appeared from the shadows, clutching a lantern. It's listening, he said softly. The sea knows your names now. She turned toward the sound again and realized the glow wasn't fading. It was moving, spreading along the vents like veins waking under skin. By dawn, the warning sign was gone. In its place, a splintered post leaned over the cliff's edge, half swallowed by fresh cracks in the stone. Talia's drone buzzed overhead, capturing wide shots of the blowholes. The footage showed strange patterns forming in the foam. Perfect circles that expanded outward in rhythm, like ripples from a heartbeat. Maya, exhausted but relentless, analyzed the sound frequencies recorded overnight. Beneath the noise of waves, there was a pulse, low, steady, biological. She tried to explain it to Liam, but he waved her off. Every island makes noise, he said. It's geothermal, not supernatural. Jonas interrupted sharply. Then why does it keep breathing deeper? His words hung in the air as a distant rumble rolled through the ground, and a thin geyser of steam erupted where the sign had been. For the first time, even Liam stopped smiling. By afternoon, the tide should have risen, but the sea had pulled back instead, bearing the jagged skeleton of reef below. Fish flopped helplessly in shallow pools. The air was hot and strangely dry. Maya and Jonas stood side by side, staring at the empty horizon. It's inhaling again, Jonas whispered. The others gathered uneasy, as the silence deepened until even their own breathing felt too loud. A sound followed, a thunderous, cavernous drag that seemed to pull the world inward. The ocean bent toward the island, waves sucked backward, in a single impossible motion. Liam stepped forward, transfixed, eyes wide. That's not wind. The cliffs groaned like ribs under pressure, and for one horrifying moment, everyone felt the ground pulse. Then came the roar. A hollow exhale from below that shattered rock and hurled mist into the sky. Paradise had taken its second breath. By evening, the sea returned, but its rhythm was wrong. The waves no longer crashed in bursts. They pulsed, measured, almost deliberate. Maya knelt by the cliff's edge with her recording equipment, listening through the hydrophone. What came through wasn't surf. It was a slow, resonant vibration, like something vast shifting beneath stone. "It's too regular to be geological," she murmured. Jonas crossed himself. "That's not the island moving," he said. "That's the island breathing." Liam leaned over her shoulder, smirking. "Maybe it's a whale," he said, but his voice faltered as the frequency deepened, shaking their bones. Eli, crouched by the rocks, felt a faint suction from the cracks, pulling at the sand between his fingers. "Whatever it is," he said, "it's close." Then the ocean gave a shudder, and the blowhole field exhaled steam that smelled faintly of rot. Inside the resort's generator shed, the group gathered around Maya's laptop, the air thick with salt and anxiety. The sound spectrogram on her screen showed a clear biological pattern, a breathing cycle nearly 8 minutes long. "There's volume displacement on a massive scale," she said quietly. "Something under the island is drawing in water." Talia's camera light flickered as she filmed, the footage trembling with every low rumble. "Maybe it's volcanic gas," Liam offered, though the uncertainty in his tone betrayed him. Jonas shook his head. "Volcanoes exhale," he said. "They don't inhale." The lights flickered, and the power died. In the darkness, the floorboards creaked in time with the sound from below. Elise's flashlight beam caught the tools vibrating on the wall. The entire island was breathing now, and they were standing on its lung. The next morning, the ocean had receded by nearly 50 meters, leaving glistening coral and stranded fish. The air pressed inward like before a storm, but the sky was clear. "It's pulling," Eli said, crouched near a fissure where air hissed upward, then downward in rhythmic bursts. Maya recorded the pressure variance, her brows tightening. "It's creating a vacuum." "Not possible at this scale." Liam stepped forward, feeling the air tug gently at his clothes. He laughed nervously, but the sound didn't carry. The suction grew stronger. Sand lifted in spirals, pebbles rolling toward the nearest vent. "Back up!" Maya shouted. Too late. A sudden gust reversed, and the blowhole inhaled sharply, pulling debris, driftwood, and water in a violent rush. For a heartbeat, Liam thought he saw light beneath the surface. Movement, something vast, shifting its position below the crust. It started with a groan like steel bending under weight. The cliff cracked in slow motion, a jagged fissure crawling inland as sand and rock sank into the earth. Tourists screamed as the ground caved in, taking pieces of the trail with it. Maya grabbed Talia's hand, pulling her away from the edge as a section of the bluff vanished into a roaring pit. Steam poured upward, glowing faintly blue. "It's opening," Jonas yelled. The sound that followed wasn't geological. It was a low, organic moan, echoing through the chasm like a wounded beast. Eli tried to reach the van, but the road split in two before him. Liam, standing closest to the rim, stared down through the vapor and whispered, "There's something moving in there." Then the vent inhaled again. This time, it didn't stop. The roar became a howl as the blowholes merged into a single massive vent. The suction was so strong, the air warped visibly, bending mist and light toward the chasm. Liam's voice vanished mid-shout as he stumbled too close. "Liam!" Maya screamed, diving forward, but Jonas caught her arm. The wind ripped their words away. Talia's camera flew from her hand and disappeared into the vortex. Eli drove a climbing spike into the soil, anchoring himself and Jonas as the suction intensified. Rocks tore free, vanishing into the glowing pit. Maya fell to her knees, reaching, as Liam's figure blurred into the mist, then was gone. The sound that followed was not a scream, but a single colossal breath inward, echoing across the sea. The island had taken its first victim. The roar had ended, but silence didn't return. It was dragged away with the wind. The cliffs now sagged inward, a black wound yawning where Liam had stood. Mist curled from the crater, rising in thin, luminous threads that smelled of salt and iron. Maya clung to the edge, nails bleeding into volcanic grit, whispering his name like a promise. Jonas crouched beside her, breathless. "He's gone, child." The sea took him, but she shook her head. From deep below came a muffled sound, a rhythmic echo. Not a scream, but a heartbeat. Eli steadied the rope line, eyes scanning the crater's glow. Something still moving down there. The ground vibrated again, small stones skittering toward the void. Talia's voice cracked through the wind. Then, it's not done breathing. And far beneath them, the island inhaled once more, sending a rush of warm, wet air up through the vents, carrying with it the unmistakable scent of decay. Ropes coiled, carabiners clinked, and the sound of the sea seemed far away, as if the island had swallowed it whole. Maya's hands shook as she clipped into Ailey's harness line. "If he's alive, we find him," she said, her voice cutting through the gusts. Jonas frowned, watching the mist churn within the crater's mouth. People don't come back from holes that breathe. But Eli was already testing the anchor, face lit by a strange resolve. "We go slow, we stay tethered. We listen for the pull." The air was unnaturally warm, damp against their skin. Steam rose in steady pulses, rhythmic as breath. Talia filmed each movement, her lens fogging with condensation. Then came a tremor, soft at first, then violent. The ropes swayed like pendulums, the crater expanding beneath them. "It's widening," Jonas shouted. A deep, guttural sound rolled upward, like something clearing its throat in the dark. "Now," Eli barked. They began their descent into the creature's mouth. Well, the descent opened into a tunnel of stone, slick with condensation, the walls breathing faintly as though flexing. Their headlamps cut through mist thick enough to taste metallic, sour, alive. The sound from below wasn't water now, but a deep, rolling hiss. Maya touched the wall and felt it ripple under her palm, soft as muscle. "This isn't rock," she whispered. Jonas muttered a prayer. Eli motioned for silence. The air shifted around them in pulses that made the rope vibrate. Behind them, the entry shaft narrowed as debris fell, sealing their escape. "We go forward," Eli said. Talia's trembling light caught veins of phosphorescence in the walls, glowing like capillaries. "It's like a lung," Maya murmured. Then, from far below came a rhythmic suction, the next breath drawing them deeper in. They reached a vast chamber where the floor shimmered with a thin layer of water, reflecting the walls that expanded and contracted in sync with the ocean's pulse. Steam rose from fissures like the breath of a sleeping beast. "Liam," Maya's voice echoed, swallowed instantly by the wet air. No answer. Then something drifted toward them. A torn scrap of fabric, wet and glistening with a strange sheen. Talia knelt to film it, but the ground quivered beneath her. "It's pumping," she said weakly. The sound deepened. A low vibration pressed against their chests, rearranging heartbeats. Eli pointed to a tunnel leading further down. "That's where it's strongest," he said. Jonas shook his head, backing away. "You follow that sound. You don't come back." But even as he spoke, the floor convulsed once, hard, and a jet of warm air hurled them against the slick walls. The chamber exhaled, then began to inhale. The next passage plunged them into darkness so absolute that sound replaced sight. The breathing was thunder now, echoing through bone and nerve. Every few seconds, a suction pulled at their lungs, making it hard to inhale. "It's controlling the pressure," Maya gasped. Eli pressed forward, tether line taut, until his boot struck open air. He shone his light down, and the beam vanished into a vast abyss. The floor ahead pulsed, a membrane stretching and releasing like a diaphragm. "We're inside it," Maya whispered. Jonas tried to retreat, but the tunnel behind them was closing, contracting with each inhalation. "It's sealing us in," Talia screamed. Then, from deep within the darkness came a single flash of movement, something massive shifting beneath translucent flesh. The whole chamber convulsed, and the group fell as the island took another colossal breath inward. The tunnels opened into a vast hollow where the walls shimmered with a pulse of light, each beat echoing through the liquid air. The sound was unmistakable now. A heartbeat, deep and uneven. Maya pressed her recorder to the wall. The readout spiked beyond scale. "It's organic," she whispered. Jonas stood frozen, lantern shaking in his grip. "The legends said it was sleeping," he murmured. "But this is awake." Eli moved closer to the wall, feeling the tremor under his palm. "No, it's not just awake," he said. "It's aware." Talia's voice trembled as she filled. "Then it knows we're here." The floor rippled, the chamber's breath deepening until droplets lifted off the surface like weightless rain. A low resonance swelled in their ears, vibrating through bone. "It's hearing us," Maya said, her voice barely audible. "It's listening for its own echo." They followed a stream of luminous water that pulsed with the same rhythm as the walls. The liquid was warm, slightly viscous, glowing from within. "It's circulating," Maya murmured. "Like blood." Jonas stepped carefully, muttering prayers that dissolved into echoes. Eli moved ahead, cutting a path through vapor. The tunnel curved downward, the glow intensifying until the air shimmered in waves of heat. From somewhere below came a resonant groan, low and mournful, as though the island were in pain. "We shouldn't be here," Talia whispered. "It feels like walking through veins." The light dimmed suddenly, as if the organism had drawn back its blood in fear. "Or defense," Maya said, glancing upward. Then the water surged backward, reversing its flow, dragging debris, and something pale and human passed their feet. It vanished too fast to name. Talia's camera blinked red once, then went dark. The mist thickened, swallowing their lights. "I lost connection," she said, tapping the dead screen. "Everything's magnetized down here." Maya's radio hissed static before cutting out completely. The only sound left was breathing. Theirs and the island's. Jonas struck his lantern. The flame bent sideways, pulled toward a faint draft deeper in the tunnel. "It's drawing air again," Eli muttered. "We need to move before it." The walls convulsed, a massive inhalation collapsing the passage behind them. Rocks burst upward like ribs snapping shut. "Run!" Maya shouted. They sprinted toward the draft, the tunnel closing behind them like a throat swallowing its meal. For a heartbeat, the light returned, just enough for Talia to glimpse handprints smeared into the wall, still wet, leading the same way they were running. They burst into a dome-shaped cavern filled with pools of translucent liquid. The glow here was faint, pulsing beneath the surface like stars seen through water. Maya leaned closer and froze. Beneath each pool's surface floated something that looked almost like an eye. Huge, lidless, and still. "Oh my God," she whispered. "They're sensory nodes. It's seeing us." Jonas stepped back, crossing himself. You said it was aware. What if we're inside its sight?" The liquid trembled, responding to their voices. One of the eyes rotated slowly, focusing. Eli pulled Maya back, just as a ripple surged across the floor. "Don't move," he whispered. The air pressure spiked. Every droplet in the room rose mid-air. Then came a flash, like a blink, and the entire chamber exhaled, extinguishing every light at once. Darkness. Only the sound of breath, their own mingling with the deeper inhale below. A rumble grew, rolling through the ground until the pools trembled and began to drain. The floor split open, revealing a pit that glowed red from within. Steam blasted upward, carrying the stench of salt and decay. "It's opening its core," Maya said, awe and terror clashing in her voice. "We're standing on its diaphragm." The suction became unbearable. Rocks lifted, dust whirled. "Move!" Eli shouted. Jonas shoved Talia toward a ledge as the ground began to tilt. Maya's recorder slipped from her grasp and tumbled into the pit, its red light blinking like a heartbeat. The next inhalation roared upward, dragging everything not anchored down into the living furnace beneath them. The first tremor came like thunder, trapped underwater. The cavern heaved, walls flexing outward as steam burst from fissures overhead. Maya pressed her palm to the trembling rock. "It's rising," she said, the island's expanding its lung capacity. Jonas gripped her shoulder. "That means the sea will move too." Eli looked upward, light flickering across his sweat-soaked face. "Then we'd better find air before it exhales." The ground buckled. Water surged through cracks, carrying a deep roar that shook their bones. Above them, the rock ceiling glowed red, veins of magma crawling like fire beneath skin. The sound of the ocean was distant no more. It was everywhere, pressing against the living walls, waiting for the next breath to erupt. They burst upward through a fissure into a sky painted with smoke. The island's coastline had changed. Half the beach was gone, swallowed by a rising ridge of molten rock. Waves crashed against it, confused and angry. "It's surfacing," Maya whispered. Jonas looked toward the horizon where the water was bending, sucked inward by an unseen force. "It's not just surfacing, it's pulling the ocean with it." Ilai's voice cut through the wind. "That ridge wasn't there before. It's forming a spine." The air stank of sulfur and death. Birds wheeled above them in panic, scattering inland. The cliffs groaned, splitting open as steam jets roared skyward like geysers. Beneath their feet, the pulse quickened, a sound of something massive awakening fully. For the first time in millennia, the horizon trembled as if answering a summons. Waves no longer followed wind. They followed rhythm. Every swell matched the pulse under their feet. "The sea's obeying it," Maya said. Her voice was drowned by a low roar as the ocean bent backward, sucked toward the island's core. "It's reorganizing pressure systems," she murmured, terrified by her own understanding. Jonas dropped to his knees. "It's calling the water home." Eli gritted his teeth. "Then we run before it takes the air too?" Talia's drone, still connected by a flickering feed, sent an image to her screen. From above, the island's vents formed a massive circular pattern, like gills. "It's feeding," she whispered. The next wave didn't crash. It disappeared, dragged under by the breathing earth. The roar began deep below and tore through the atmosphere like thunder splitting the world. The vents erupted in columns of steam so tall they pierced the clouds. Lava and water met in violent explosions that painted the sky in blood and ash. "It's standing!" Maya shouted over the noise. The ground tilted sharply. The sea around them rolled backward, exposing the ocean floor for miles. Talia screamed as the horizon itself seemed to rise. "That's not land, it's its back!" Eli pulled her down behind a boulder as debris rained. Jonas covered his ears, yelling prayers into the wind. The air filled with the sound of lungs expanding, the ocean drawn upward as if gravity reversed. "It's not an island," Maya cried. "It's a living continent." When the quake subsided, silence followed, but it was the silence of awe, not peace. The island now towered above the sea, its cliffs dripping magma and mist. The blowholes had become open vents, exhaling smoke in steady rhythm. From their vantage, the survivors saw what lay beneath the myth. A living mass rising from the ocean, vast enough to bend horizon lines. "It's outgrown its disguise," Maya whispered. The creature groaned, a sound that carried for miles, shaking the clouds. Waves fled from its base in all directions. Jonas fell to his knees. "It's free," he said. "After all this time, it's free." Eli turned to the others, eyes hollow. "No," he said quietly. "It's hungry." The first exhale shattered the clouds. A hurricane of steam and ash tore across the island, flattening trees and hurling shards of molten stone into the air. Maya screamed over the deafening wind. "We need shelter. Underground." Eli pointed toward the fissures that had once been their path upward. "Back the way we came. Down." Jonas hesitated, staring up at the sky, streaked red and black, muttering, "The sea's in the air now." The air itself burned. Salt crystallized on their skin. Talia stumbled, clutching her camera. "It's exhaling everything," she shouted. The roar deepened. The horizon bent outward as the creature's breath displaced the atmosphere. For a fleeting second, Maya glimpsed the ocean retreating miles away, walls of water forming in slow, impossible arcs. Then the wind reversed, sucking inward again. One colossal inhalation preparing for another. They plunged back into the fissure, swallowed by red light. The tunnels now pulsed like veins, drawing air inward with every massive breath. "It's cycling pressure," Maya gasped, crouching as a gust nearly tore her away. "We'll be crushed if we don't move between beats." Eli nodded grimly. "We run when it exhales. Move when it breathes out." Jonas dragged Talia behind him as the walls shimmered with heat. They sprinted through corridors that flexed and moaned, following the faint whistle of escaping air. "It's turning its breath against us," Maya said, pressing a hand to the living stone. The next exhalation came, a violent blast that cleared their path but hurled dust into their eyes. "Now," Eli shouted. They ran, each heartbeat a countdown to the next inhalation. The roar of water rose from the depths, a tsunami's birth echoing underground. The creature's breathing had disturbed the ocean's floor, and now it was pouring back in. "It's flooding itself," Maya shouted. "It's not dying, it's cooling." Streams of boiling water burst through cracks, turning steam to fog. Jonas slipped, dragged down by the current, but Eli caught him by the harness. "Move!" he barked. Talia's camera blinked red again, recording glimpses of light beneath the water. Shapes twisting like tendons. "It's regenerating," Maya said, horrified. The current surged, and the tunnel ahead collapsed in a thunderous roar. "Left tunnel!" Eli yelled. They dove sideways just as the water exploded upward, carrying debris and bone-white fragments of coral, like teeth spat from the island's throat. They reached a massive hollow where the air shimmered like heat over asphalt. The sound of breathing had slowed, but every pulse of the walls felt heavier, more deliberate. "It's stabilizing," Maya said, panting. "The organisms adapting to the surface environment." Jonas collapsed to his knees. "Then it's not done." A low vibration rippled through the ground. Steady, powerful, patient. Talia raised her camera and gasped. Through the mist, she caught a glimpse of movement above, shadows shifting behind layers of translucent flesh. "It's growing eyes," she whispered. Eli turned to Maya. "We can't outrun it if it sees us." The heartbeat grew louder. The tunnel behind them began to close like a clenched fist. "Then we go down," Maya said. "If it's exhaling now, the only safe place is inside its breath." They climbed into the final shaft just as the pressure changed again. The walls expanded, glowing brighter, the air turning from heat to wind. "This is it," Maya shouted. "It's about to exhale." Eli anchored the rope, gripping hard as the gust began. The wind roared upward, dragging dust, light and debris into a vortex. "Hold!" he yelled. Jonas' hand slipped. Maya caught him. The gust became a hurricane, then reversed direction entirely, blasting outward with a deafening scream. The island exhaled, propelling everything from its lungs, a storm of steam and stone tearing through the shaft. The survivors clung to the walls as the world shook around them. When the wind finally died, silence filled the void. The island had breathed out, and the sky above had changed color. The wind was gone. Only steam hung over the island's blackened skin, curling upward into a gray, silent sky. Maya crawled out of the fissure first, coughing into her sleeve. Behind her, Eli's voice broke the stillness. It stopped breathing. They stood together at the edge of what had been Kalana Cove, now a barren expanse of cracked basalt still steaming from within. Jonas knelt and touched the ground. It was warm, pulsing faintly as if holding its breath. "It's sleeping again," he said. Talia raised her ruined camera, its lens fractured, but blinking faint red. "Then this is the footage the world will never believe." Far away, the ocean crept back, slow and uncertain, as though afraid of the thing it had birthed. By morning, rescue helicopters skimmed the coastline, their rotors stirring ash into spirals. From above, the island looked dead, a crater surrounded by black water. But the pilots refused to land. The survivors waved, voices drowned in wind. "They can't see us," Maya said, the air distorted, rippling like heat haze. "It's interfering with sound," Eli muttered, "like an echo chamber." Beneath the hum of the helicopters came another sound, low, rhythmic, like the ocean whispering under its breath. Jonas looked to the horizon. "It's still alive," he said softly, "just quieter now." A sudden vibration shuddered through the ground, subtle but real. Maya's eyes filled with dread. "It's listening again." Days passed before the first rescue vessel reached the island's edge. The sea was unnaturally calm, mirror flat, no wind, no sound. The rescuers found them huddled in the ruins of the cliffs. Maya held her recorder, the one she'd retrieved from the fissure, replaying a single sound loop, the creature's last breath. "It slowed," she murmured. "It's still there, beneath us." Jonas refused to board the rescue boat. "You can't leave something that remembers you," he said. Eli gripped his shoulder. "You can't stay here either." The sea began to move again, gently at first, then in long, deep swells, as though the ocean were sighing in regret. The rescuers didn't notice the faint pulse that rippled across the water's surface, but Maya did. She hit record one last time. Weeks later, scientists analyzed the footage recovered from Talia's camera. The images glitched between frames. Ocean, mist, then what appeared to be muscle and light beneath water. "Organic structures the size of mountains," one researcher whispered. The final seconds showed Liam's last recording, distorted and blue, his voice whispering something indecipherable over the sound of rushing air. Maya watched from behind the glass, silent. When the playback ended, the speakers emitted one last sound, a faint inhale, then static. The technicians froze. "Feedback loop?" one asked. Maya only shook her head. "No, it's answering." Months later, divers returned to Kaana Cove, now a quiet scar on the Pacific. The water was warm, too warm, and the reefs had grown strange, curling in spirals that pulsed faintly with light. One diver's camera captured it, a vent half hidden under coral, exhaling a single plume of bubbles. The rhythm was unmistakable. Maya watched the footage from the mainland, rippling through her hair. "It's still breathing," she said softly. Eli stared out at the horizon, the sky bleeding gold at dusk. "Then it's dreaming again." The sea was calm, but beneath its still surface something stirred. A memory of lungs that once filled with the world and exhaled it whole.